Flight attendant asks black woman to change seats, then learns she's the CEO. At 30,000 feet above ground, where first-class luxury meets professional service, a single moment of prejudice is about to change everything. When flight attendant Sarah Chen questions Maya Richardson's presence in first class, she has no idea she's about to confront the CEO of TechFusion Global, or that her next actions will spark a revolution in airline industry culture. What happens when unconscious bias meets undeniable authority? Let's stick around to find out. But before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from today. If you enjoy this tale, don't forget to subscribe. The morning sun streamed through the crew room windows at San Francisco International Airport, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Sarah Chen stood before the mirror, adjusting her navy blue uniform with practiced precision. At 24, she was one of the youngest flight attendants on the premium routes, a fact that filled her with both pride and lingering insecurity. Her fingers traced the silver wings pinned to her lapel, triggering a flash of memory. Graduation day at the flight academy just 6 months ago. She'd stood tall among her peers, dreams of a prestigious aviation career stretching before her like an endless runway. Now here she was, assigned to first-class service on one of the airline's most elite routes. Remember, her instructor's voice echoed in her mind, excellence isn't just about service, it's about judgment. The crew room door opened, and Patricia Walker strode in, her 20 years of experience evident in every measured step. The senior attendant's presence commanded immediate attention, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a perfect bun. "Good morning, team," Patricia began, her voice carrying that perfect blend of authority and warmth. "Today's flight to New York is fully booked in first class. We have several VIPs, including 2 board members from Tech Solutions and a senior partner from Goldman Sachs." Sarah listened intently, mentally noting the passenger profiles. These were the kinds of travelers she'd been trained to serve: executives, business leaders, the kind of people who belonged in first class. As the briefing continued, Sarah's mind wandered to her pre-flight checklist. First class was her domain, a responsibility she took seriously. Each detail mattered. The precise angle of the magazines, the perfect chill of the champagne, the immaculate presentation of each leather seat. The boarding process would begin in 40 minutes. Sarah made her way to the aircraft, her heels clicking purposefully against the terminal floor. The morning light filtered through the massive windows, illuminating the sleek form of the Boeing 787 waiting at the gate. Inside the first-class cabin, Sarah moved with methodical precision. Her hands glided over each seat, ensuring perfect alignment. She checked the temperature of the hand towels, adjusted the lighting to the optimal morning setting, verified the stock of premium beverages. A familiar face appeared: Richard Thompson, a regular on this route. His Brooks Brothers suit and Rolex watch as much a part of him as his platinum frequent flyer status. "Good morning, Ms. Chen," he nodded, settling into 2A with practiced ease. "Welcome back, Mr. Thompson," Sarah responded, already reaching for his preferred pre-flight sparkling water with lime. More passengers filtered in, each fitting the mental image Sarah had of first-class travelers. A distinguished older couple in tailored clothing, a tech executive tapping away on his MacBook Pro, a senior lawyer Sarah recognized from previous flights. Then Maya Richardson appeared at the cabin entrance, and Sarah felt her carefully constructed world shift slightly. Maya moved with natural grace, her charcoal Armani suit perfectly tailored to her tall frame. Her braids were swept up into an elegant updo, and a delicate Cartier necklace adorned her neck. She carried a Hermes laptop bag and a small Louis Vuitton carry-on with easy confidence. But something in Sarah's mind snagged, a discordant note in her carefully orchestrated symphony of expectations. Despite Maya's obvious sophistication, despite the designer accessories and professional demeanor, Sarah felt an immediate, unconscious resistance. Maya paused at row 3, consulting her boarding pass before sliding into 3C. Sarah watched, her brow furrowing slightly. Something didn't feel right. She'd been working this route long enough to recognize the regular first-class passengers, to understand the unspoken patterns of privilege and position. Maya pulled out a MacBook Pro and began reviewing what appeared to be presentation slides, her movements efficient and practiced. Yet Sarah couldn't shake the nagging feeling, the instinct she'd been trained to trust. From the corner of her eye, Sarah noticed Maya's subtle observation of her reaction. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, Maya's expression revealed nothing but composed awareness, as if she'd been here before, as if she recognized the thoughts forming behind Sarah's professional mask. The morning light continued to stream through the windows, illuminating the cabin in soft golden hues, but for Sarah, the perfect order of her morning had been disrupted. She straightened her uniform, a nervous habit she thought she'd overcome in training, and began to formulate her approach. After all, she reminded herself, it was her responsibility to maintain standards, to ensure everything and everyone was in their proper place. With this thought firmly in mind, Sarah took a deep breath and prepared to do what she believed was her duty, unaware that this moment would become a turning point in her understanding of true service and human dignity. Sarah approached row 3 with practiced poise, her professional smile firmly in place. "Good morning, ma'am. May I verify your boarding pass again?" Maya looked up from her laptop, her expression neutral but knowing. Without a word, she retrieved her boarding pass from her Hermes bag and presented it alongside her ID. Everything was, of course, in perfect order: first-class ticket, seat 3C, priority boarding status. "I'll need to check this again with our system," Sarah persisted, despite having already scanned the ticket during boarding. From across the aisle, Mr. Thompson glanced up from his Wall Street Journal, his eyebrows raising slightly. Maya's voice was measured, carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms. "Is there a specific concern, Ms. Chen?" She gestured to her boarding pass. "As you can see, everything is in order." Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks but pressed on. "It's just protocol, ma'am. We need to ensure all passengers are in their assigned cabins." The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. A few rows ahead, an elderly gentleman in a bespoke suit lowered his Financial Times, watching the interaction with growing interest. The cabin's atmosphere began to shift, the usual pre-flight murmur giving way to uncomfortable silence. "I suggest," Sarah continued, her voice taking on an edge, "that there might have been a mix-up at the gate. Perhaps you were meant to be in business class?" Maya closed her laptop slowly, deliberately. "Ms. Chen, I'm a Diamond Elite member with over 200,000 miles this year alone. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Her calm demeanor made Sarah's behavior seem increasingly irrational. From the galley, Patricia emerged, her experienced eye-taking in the scene. She'd seen situations like this before, and her instincts were screaming warnings. Furthermore, Maya continued, reaching for her phone, "I believe it's important to document this interaction. Would you like to explain again why you're questioning my presence in first class?" Other passengers were now openly watching. A young tech executive in 4A had removed his AirPods, his fingers hovering over his own phone. The distinguished couple in 1A and 1B exchanged knowing glances. Sarah felt the situation slipping from her control, but couldn't seem to stop herself. "Ma'am, if you can't provide additional verification, I'll need to call security to sort this out." A sharp intake of breath from several passengers punctuated her words. Patricia stepped forward, but Maya raised a hand, her composure unbroken. "Please do," Maya replied, her phone now recording. "I'd be very interested in explaining to them, and to your corporate office, why a first-class passenger with proper documentation is being harassed about her right to be here." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Though I suspect we both know the real reason, don't we, Ms. Chen?" The implication hung in the air like heavy smoke. Mr. Thompson had set aside his newspaper entirely now, his face a mask of disapproval, not at Maya, but at Sarah. Other passengers began pulling out their phones, the soft clicks of camera apps opening providing a subtle soundtrack to the unfolding scene. Patricia finally intervened, her voice carrying years of authority. "Sarah, a word in the galley, please." But Sarah, caught in the momentum of her own prejudice, made one final mistake. "Security will need to verify your identity and status, ma'am. It's for the safety of all our premium passengers." The word premium landed like a slap, its implications clear to everyone in the cabin. Maya's expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened slightly as she pressed the record button on her phone. "Premium passengers," Maya repeated softly, her voice carrying clearly in the now silent cabin. I see. And what, exactly, makes someone a premium passenger in your eyes, Miss Chen? The question hung in the air, its true meaning unmistakable. Several phones were now openly recording, their lenses capturing what had transformed from a routine pre-flight check into something far more significant. Patricia's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Sarah, galley. Now. Her tone left no room for argument. As Sarah turned to follow Patricia, she caught glimpses of the other passengers' faces, disappointment, anger, embarrassment on her behalf. Mr. Thompson had already pulled out his phone and appeared to be composing an email, his face grim. Maya remained seated, her phone still recording, her dignity intact. She had handled the situation with a grace that made Sarah's actions appear even more egregious by comparison. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, illuminating a scene that would soon become much larger than this first-class cabin, much more significant than one flight attendant's misguided assumptions. The confrontation had lasted less than 5 minutes, but its implications would echo far beyond this morning flight. As Sarah followed Patricia to the galley, she was yet to realize that her career wasn't the only thing about to change course dramatically. The tension in the first-class cabin had reached its peak when a tall figure emerged from the business section. James Harrison, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, moved with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to command. Several frequent flyers immediately straightened in their seats, recognition dawning on their faces. Sarah, still standing near Maya's seat, felt the atmosphere shift before she understood why. The businessman in 4A had suddenly lowered his newspaper, his eyes widening. The couple in 1A and 1B exchanged knowing glances. Maya, James called out, his voice carrying easily through the cabin. I hope I haven't missed anything interesting. Sarah's heart seemed to stop mid-beat. She knew that voice. Everyone in the airline knew that voice. James Harrison, CEO of Horizon Airlines, the man whose signature appeared on her paychecks. Maya looked up, a subtle smile playing at her lips. James, she acknowledged smoothly. I was wondering when you'd make your presence known. The pieces started falling into place in Sarah's mind, each realization hitting harder than the last. The way Maya had handled herself, her composed responses, her quiet confidence, it all made terrible sense now. James moved to stand beside Maya's seat, his presence commanding the entire cabin's attention. I see you've had a chance to review the integration proposals, he noted, gesturing to Maya's laptop screen. Then, turning to address the cabin at large, his voice took on a more formal tone. For those who don't know, Maya Richardson is the CEO of TechFusion Global. Her company is currently overseeing our $50 million digital transformation project. He paused, letting the information sink in. She's also one of the most respected tech executives in Silicon Valley. Sarah felt the color drain from her face. The woman she had repeatedly questioned, suggested should move to coach, and nearly called security on was not just a first-class passenger. She was a powerful executive working directly with their airline. The other passengers' reactions were immediate and telling. The businessman who had been pretending not to watch now looked mortified. The couple in first row sat straighter, their earlier whispers silenced. Even Mr. Thompson in 2A, who had witnessed everything, seemed to shrink in his seat. Maya's team has been instrumental in revolutionizing our customer service systems, James continued, his tone pleasant but carrying an edge of steel. In fact, the very system you were so concerned about, Ms. Chen, was largely designed under her leadership. Sarah felt Patricia's hand on her elbow, gently but firmly guiding her toward the galley. Her legs moved automatically, though her mind was still processing the magnitude of her error. Maya remained seated, her posture relaxed but dignified. She hadn't moved to defend herself, hadn't pulled rank, hadn't even mentioned her position. She had simply maintained her composure in the face of blatant prejudice, letting the truth emerge on its own. I trust there won't be any further concerns about seating arrangements? James's question, though posed quietly, carried throughout the cabin. His controlled anger was evident in the tight set of his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. No, sir, Patricia responded quickly, speaking for both of them as she continued to guide Sarah away. We apologize for any inconvenience. From the galley, Sarah watched as other passengers began making small gestures of support toward Maya. Apologetic smiles, respectful nods, embarrassed glances. The same people who had sat silently during her questioning now seemed eager to distance themselves from the incident. James took the seat beside Maya, their conversation shifting seamlessly to business matters, but Sarah could feel his awareness of her still hovering in the galley. She had never felt more exposed, more ashamed, or more aware of her own prejudices. I need to apologize, she whispered to Patricia, her voice shaking. Not now, Patricia replied firmly. Right now, you need to step back and think about what just happened. Really think about it. Sarah leaned against the galley wall, her professional demeanor crumbling. She thought about how quickly she had jumped to conclusions, how stubbornly she had clung to her assumptions even in the face of evidence. She thought about Maya's patience, her dignity, her refusal to be provoked into an angry response. The revelation wasn't just about Maya's identity. It was about Sarah's own biases, laid bare in the harsh light of consequence. She had acted on prejudices she hadn't even realized she carried, and now those actions would have repercussions she was only beginning to understand. Through the galley curtain, she could hear James and Maya discussing quarterly projections and integration timelines, their voices carrying the easy familiarity of longtime colleagues. The normality of their conversation only emphasized the absurdity of Sarah's earlier suspicions. The businessman from 4A approached the galley, requesting a drink. As Sarah moved to serve him, she noticed how he avoided meeting her eye, as if her prejudice might be contagious. The shame burned deeper, a lesson being carved into her consciousness with each passing moment. This wasn't just about one mistake, she realized. This was about a system of assumptions and biases that she had unconsciously perpetuated. As the reality of her actions settled over her, Sarah Chen understood that this flight would mark a turning point in her life, though whether it would be the end of her career or the beginning of her education remained to be seen. The remainder of the flight passed in a blur for Sarah. Patricia had relieved her of duties, confining her to the crew rest area. Through the small window, she watched the clouds drift by, each mile bringing her closer to what she now realized would be an inevitable reckoning. As the plane touched down at JFK, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from HR. Report to conference room A immediately upon landing. Do not leave the airport premises. The terminal was unusually busy for a midday arrival. Through the windows, she could see news vans gathering at the arrivals area. Somehow, word had gotten out. In conference room A, a panel of executives waited. Their faces were grim, tablets displaying multiple video angles of the incident. Passengers' recordings had already made their way to corporate. The airline's legal counsel sat at one end, a stack of documents before her. Ms. Chen, the HR director began. We've reviewed the incidents that occurred during Flight 1123 this morning. Multiple passengers have filed complaints, and the videos are... She paused, searching for the right word. Damning. Sarah sat silently as they played the recordings. Her voice sounded foreign to her ears, condescending, suspicious, laden with prejudice she hadn't recognized in the moment. Maya's composed responses only highlighted the inappropriateness of her actions. Furthermore, the legal counsel added, Dr. Richardson has filed a formal complaint. Given her position and the nature of our contract with TechFusion Global, this situation has implications far beyond a simple customer service issue. The HR director slid a document across the table. Your employment with Horizon Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. Additionally, we're required to report this incident to the Aviation Board for review of your flight attendant certification. Sarah's hands trembled as she signed the termination papers. Outside the conference room, she could hear the growing buzz of media activity. In the main terminal, reporters had gathered around Maya and James. Cameras flashed as Maya stepped up to the microphones, her presence commanding attention without effort. What happened today is not unique, Maya began, her voice clear and measured. It's a manifestation of the subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination that people of color face daily, even, or especially, in spaces where we've earned our place. Sarah watched from a distance as Maya continued, This isn't about one flight attendant or one airline. It's about a systemic issue that requires systemic change. That's why I'm announcing a new initiative in partnership with Horizon Airlines. James stepped forward, joining Maya at the microphones. Effective immediately, Horizon Airlines will be implementing a comprehensive diversity and inclusion training program. Additionally, we're establishing an oversight committee to review and reform our service protocols. Sarah's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. The videos had gone viral. Hashtag First Class While Black was trending. Major news networks were picking up the story. Her LinkedIn profile was flooded with messages, none of them supportive. That evening, in her small apartment, Sarah watched the coverage continue on multiple networks. Maya's press conference was being replayed, interspersed with clips from the flight. Aviation blogs were reporting that other airlines were already announcing similar initiatives, the ripple effect spreading across the industry. The aviation industry has long struggled with issues of discrimination. Maya's voice came through Sarah's TV. Today's incident, while unfortunate, provides an opportunity for real change. We're not just talking about sensitivity training, we're talking about fundamental reform in how airlines approach service, hiring, and customer interaction. The camera cut to James. We've terminated the employee involved and will be cooperating fully with the Aviation Board's review. But more importantly, we're committed to ensuring this type of incident never happens again. Sarah's phone lit up with a message from the Aviation Board. Her certification review was scheduled for next week. Another notification showed an industry alert had been issued. Her name and photo were now on a no-hire list circulated among major airlines. On screen, Maya was concluding her press conference. Success doesn't shield you from discrimination, but it does give you a platform to address it. Today, we're using that platform to push for meaningful change. Sarah turned off the TV, but the silence was worse. Her uniform hung in the closet, the wings pin catching the last light of day, a reminder of dreams built and shattered in a single morning. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, each one a reminder of how quickly life could change when unconscious bias met uncompromising consequence. The weight of her actions settled over her like a heavy blanket. She had lost more than a job. She had lost a career, a dream, and most importantly, her illusions about her own prejudices. As night fell over the city, Sarah Chen faced the hardest truth. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones we never knew we needed to learn. Sarah sat in her dimly lit apartment, scrolling through yet another news article about the incident. Her face stared back at her from the screen, a still image captured from a passenger's video that had gone viral. The headline read, "Airline Industry Confronts Systemic Bias After High-Profile Discrimination Incident." Maya's interview with CNN played on her laptop. This isn't about one flight attendant or one airline. Maya's composed voice filled the room. It's about acknowledging the subtle and not-so-subtle ways bias manifests in our daily interactions. The question isn't whether we have biases. We all do. The question is how we respond when they're exposed. Sarah's phone buzzed with another rejection email from a regional airline. While we appreciate your experience, given recent events, she didn't need to read further. Her aviation career, built over 6 years of dedication, had effectively ended in those few minutes of prejudiced judgment. The hashtag First Class While Black had trended for days, spawning thousands of similar stories from travelers across the globe. Corporate leaders, celebrities, and politicians had weighed in, turning her mistake into a national conversation about privilege and prejudice in the travel industry. Maya's company, TechFusion Global, had announced a groundbreaking initiative in partnership with major airlines, the Aviation Equality Project. The $10 million program would implement comprehensive bias training, reform customer service protocols, and establish diversity benchmarks for airline staff. The incident was a catalyst, Maya explained in her Forbes interview. But the changes we're implementing address long-standing systemic issues. Every passenger deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. Sarah opened her laptop and began typing. Dear Dr. Richardson, I've written this letter 100 times in my head, but words seem inadequate to address the harm I caused. My actions that day weren't just unprofessional. They were a manifestation of biases I hadn't confronted in myself. Watching your interviews, seeing how you've transformed this incident into an opportunity for industry-wide change, has taught me more than any training session could. You had every right to respond with anger, yet you chose to educate and elevate the conversation. I'm not asking for forgiveness or understanding. Instead, I want you to know that your response to my prejudice has fundamentally changed how I view the world. While I've lost my career in aviation, I've gained something more valuable, the ability to recognize and confront my own biases. The changes you're implementing in the airline industry will help ensure that no other passenger experiences what I put you through. Thank you for turning my mistake into meaningful progress. Sincerely, Sarah Chen. She hit send, not expecting a response, understanding that some bridges can't be rebuilt. The evening news played in the background, showing footage of airline executives announcing new diversity initiatives. Her former employer had already implemented several of Maya's recommended changes, including blind customer complaint reviews and enhanced cultural sensitivity training. The sun was setting outside her window, casting long shadows across her used flight attendant uniform, still hanging in the closet. Sarah thought about how quickly life could change, how one moment of unchecked bias could unravel years of work and reshape entire industries. Her phone buzzed again. Another news alert about Maya's initiative. The photo showed Maya speaking at an aviation industry conference, her presence commanding, her message clear. Change wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Sarah closed her laptop, the weight of her lessons settling around her like a heavy blanket. She had become both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for change, her mistake transforming into a movement that would affect countless future travelers. Outside, planes continued their endless dance across the sky, carrying passengers who would benefit from the changes her actions had inadvertently sparked. She wouldn't be among the crew serving them, but perhaps her story would serve a different purpose, a reminder that confronting our biases, however painful, was the first step toward genuine change. The lesson had been expensive, costing her career and reputation, but its value extended far beyond her personal loss. In the end, that would have to be enough.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you the best stories.